Alrighty, so let's continue on with our work. And this time the current topics is we're going to learn this GitHub workflow. And to conceptually, hopefully help set the tone, I'm going to move back to Windows. And I found an image that I hope helps start to explain visually some of this. So here's your local system. Here's GitHub. And what you did is you created on your local system repos. Now this side is something as you move more into GitHub, you learn, especially because ultimately if you're going to go into this profession, you're working with other members of a team, and those teams then use GitHub to work on a common project. So for us, we're not really doing the team concept, but we are using the basic functionality of cloning, which we just did. And now you're going to learn commits and pushes. Okay. So, but ultimately what you've been doing over on the GitHub interface, you're now going to do locally, and then you're going to commit and push that into your GitHub repos. So to understand more, hopefully you're just going to walk through it, but I want to say from this point forward, I recommend no longer using the GitHub interface for making changes to your files, okay? Because you now have the ability to do those changes locally and push them to GitHub. You still have the GitHub links that you submit for your work, but you no longer need that for doing the actual changes. So let me just show you. Okay, so let's come back over here. Remember, here's where we were. We had cloned 3 of your repos, right? And we're going to actually now set you up to do the next assignment, which is the lecture. So we're going to be working inside of your private repo. Remember, all lectures are done in the private repo. So if you remember me talking about this, I wanted to show you how I open it up with all 3 showing up. You could open up just the one you're working on. That's totally fine. Some people have a preference for the way that they do this. What I'm going to do though is I'm actually just going to open it from here, and notice how there's lectures, and then we have week 1 and 2. So this is going to be the first week where we actually have another directory that we're setting up inside of lectures. Again, this is where we set up the lecture directory originally up on GitHub. We cloned it, so now it's local. So now we're going to actually set up a new folder. Okay, now if we set it up here under lectures, it should create that folder here. All right, so let's actually just do that. So, oh yeah, so I didn't even really say that there is a nice little interface here to create these folders and files. The key is, where are you selected right now if you're using this interface? But do know, and you'll learn a little bit more about this on the next items on Thursday, you'll learn a little bit more about the command line. There is a way to also do this in the command line. Okay, so let's just make a folder here, and let's click here, having selected on the lecture. Let's click into folder, and let's make one called HTML. Now we could do this. I'm going to do a -CSS. Okay, because we're going to do both the HTML and the CSS in here. Now, in here, we're going to create a new file. Okay, so let's just go ahead and create that new file inside of this directory. Now, he's going to, the lecture you're going to listen to this week, he's going to do this. So when he does it in the video, know that you've already done the first steps. We're going to create a file. That file is going to be called index.html. And one of the things I love about that video, he tells you why we call it index. And by the way, this should be all lowercase .html, no spaces anywhere. And once I hit enter, it actually opens up that folder, that file from that folder onto my local system. Okay, and then he's going to walk you through coding this file, and then he'll end up telling you about something called init that does, and I'm using explanation part that runs, that creates some of this base code for you. But what I love is that he actually talks about what this is. Okay, But let's just do this. Now, this is where having an editor makes your life so much easier. I'm going to do an H1 and hit tab, and I'm just going to say hello local Git. Okay. Now, the workflow that I'm talking about, we've already started. We're changing files on our local system. We're either changing files or we're adding new files. So what I'm going to teach you, and this is where, oh, one of the things, by the way, let me just not skip over this. One of the great things about VS Code, and you may see on your VS Code a little dot up here, and that means you haven't saved it. And one of the things I recommend you turning on is under File, do autosave. Autosave is really great because it automatically saves the files as soon as you do anything, okay? As soon as you type, it saves it. You don't have to do that additional step. So I'm going to do an ls down on the terminal. And again, you see those 3 directories listed. I'm going to change directories into Rio, FCCW, and now I'm going to look at the private. Now, by the way, at this point, I could hit tab, and it actually will complete it by looking in the local directory. Talk more about that later. I'm going to hit enter, and now here, I'm going to see that lecture directory. So you're looking at this interface right here, but you're looking at it from the command line. And because we had that directory FA20 opened, it was showing whatever was opened in that, which was these first are not open, but what was available to us. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to type CD lecture. Now I'm going to just type L, hit tab because there's only one L. It finds it. Again, I could hit LS. You might be wondering, Ria, why are you navigating here when you could be using it here? You're about to find out. Okay, so we created this HTML, CSS. Again, it's only one H, so I can hit tab. And here is the file, the index file we just created. Okay, so before we do the next step, I want to remind you by looking at the instructions what you're learning. You're learning in the Github Workflow. Sorry, Git Workflow. And first thing we're going to do is get a status. Okay, and we could have done this command. I probably, in this case, I don't want to say should, but could have done this command before we did anything to show you. But we'll do it again. So git status shows us right now is that your branch, we have untracked files right there, and then you can actually add the files that we know we need to add. It says we do have some untracked files, so it doesn't know what the names of them are because we haven't tracked them. So we know that this index file, so we can do, and this is the next command. I'm going to do git add, and I'm just going to call it index.html because, by the way, I'm not just calling it that. That's actually the name of the file that we're adding to our repo. Okay, so we added it to there. So now I'm going to use the up arrows. I'm going to look at status again. And status says, oh, great, you have a new file. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I have a new file. Now, I also have a new folder, but it doesn't really track that at the same level that it does the files. Something you'll learn about as we go through. And the other thing is that notice that we have an origin and a master. Okay, the origin is our local one. The master is just a different branch, and it's called, because you're going to push to the master, and that's really the branch that you're pushing to. Again, we learn more about branches a little bit later. Okay, so now we've done the add, and now we're going to commit the file. Okay, so we're going to do a git commit. And if you want, you can always look at my write-up, and I'm going to move my cursor so you can see this a little better. I'm actually going to increase the editor just a little bit so you can see, at least I think that's what I did there. Yeah, I did. Took Windows on my virtual site just a moment to kind of catch up with what I was doing. Again, I have to slow down when I'm on this side, which is not necessarily bad. And I'm going to go adding file for lecture. I'm going to end. Now, really important is exactly this git space commit space -m for a message, adding files for lecture. I'm going to hit enter. Okay. So now what we've done is we've added the file into our local repo. We've committed the file into our local repo. If I type git status, I can see that I am fine. There's nothing new because I haven't changed anything. If I was to go over here and change something, then that git status would change, which you will be doing as you're working through the lecture. But now I can do the last piece, okay, which is a git push. Now this is the piece where we're actually taking our local repo and we're pushing it up to GitHub. Okay, so git push. Takes it a moment here because it's got to travel over the internet. Okay, now what I'm going to do is now, and by the way, it successfully did it. And it's important to read the messages as they come out. I'm actually going to move over to, I meant to. Again, I have to slow down. My interface is a little bit slow here. Now, this is my GitHub interface because I want to look at that file, right? I'm not going to change it. I just want to look at it. So I'm going to go to 82. I'm going to go to my private, which, by the way, you can already see that there was 30 seconds ago, there was a push done, right? And now if I go into lectures, I can see that CSS directory, HTML, the one I created locally, and the associated file is in here. That's awesome, right? So what you've done is you've completed the workflow. And let me just review it here just to show you, because I actually gave you a line item for what this would be. And so what I did is I did the git status, but I did a git add, and I gave it the file name, which I recommend in the beginning you do. As we do stuff later on, I'll show you how to do the git add star so it adds everything. Just makes it a little easier. Then I did a git commit -m with whatever my message was, and then I did a git push. Okay, so that's great. If you were able to get that done and you saw it successfully on there, then that's what you will talk about in your post. If you got an error, then what you want to do is talk about that. We're actually going to make one more change, okay? Now, not on this one because this one is done. We're going to make one on your public one because what I want you to do here, I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to show you how to clear this. I'm going to show you how to do a Git Log. And what this should show is that I have one commit. Oh, there's actually more on there, just not showing up. What happens is if your editor, which my case is, oh, it looks like I have a lot on here. Oh, this is from work I had previously done. That's okay. I can make this a little bigger. But probably you will only have, right? Because, and actually it does show the stuff that you did out on GitHub as well. So now I want you to take a print screen and we're going to do this process one more time, but now we're going to do it inside the public repo for, remember how we put images out in the, oh, this one doesn't have it, but we'll create that. I had you do that in a separate video. So as a matter of fact, I'll just go do it now. I'm going to create in this. Now, again, this is the benefit of having this directory open like this. And now I'm going to type snipping. Snipping tool. And all I have here is I have my Git log up here. I'm going to go ahead and type new. I'm just going to select this. And I'm going to name it a little something different. And I'm going to put it in a different directory. Okay, I'm going to put it, what directory would I put it in? Let's see if you know without me showing you yet. I'm going to do save as. This time, instead of putting it in that directory like I did on the last assignment because we hadn't done this part, this time I'm going to go into FA22. I'm going to go into public. I do see my images. And now I'm going to change this to something that, you know, maybe GitHub or Git Workflow. You can name it whatever you want. But guess what? this is another way that we've added things in the local repo. So let me show you that we still have to do. Let me go down here, right? But the key is also that we are going to, why isn't that? I'll just take it. It's a little bit lagged right there. I love it when the system lags. Actually, I'm going to shut out my terminal just for a minute. I'm going to actually go back into terminal because I want to show you how there's another way I could, because remember, I'm in this FA directory and I was showing you how I could change the directory. The other way I can do that is I can actually just open this directory and it won't see the other ones. And some students like it that way, like I said before, but I'm going to actually do, again, I stopped my terminal and I started again. So now I'm going to do change directory to Rio FCCW, now underscore public. Okay. And now I'm going to do a git status. Again, look here, we have a file, which we know we do because we have that images file, that print screen that we did. Now I'm actually going to move to that directory, cd-imj. Okay, so now I can see that I'm in that directory. Again, I'm going to do a git status. Now I know I have untracked files, so I'm going to do, now if you forget the name of the file, which is totally okay, I'm actually going to, now notice how mine on Windows actually capitalized the extension. I'm going to do change directory. Oh no, I'm in that directory. I'm going to call Git Add, and now I'm going to give it the name. By the way, this is where I could also just do star. If I do Git Add star, use my up arrows to do Git status again, I see that it actually, without me typing the name, because I knew I only had one file that was ready or available or added, I can now do Git commit -m. And now I'm going to say adding new print screen for week 3 current topics. Cool, right? So before I do the next step, I want to show you, because the last time I didn't, I want to actually show you what we're doing here again. So I'm going to go back to 82 directory. I'm going to go to public this time, because that's where I'm working. I'm going to show you that there is, actually in this case, and don't let this confuse you, there's not an images directory because I had created this repo since doing that other work. Okay, but now when I do the next step, because I've committed the file, I've added the file, I've committed the file. Let's see, the next step is git push. This pushes my file to GitHub. And then it's going to go through the process again, depending on your network, right? Cool. So even if you, oh, by the way, if you got an error here, this makes it a little bit harder. So if you did get an error on this and couldn't push, you could also just do what I did last time, which is just attach the file so we can help you troubleshoot what that is. But because we've done it now, right, now you will have, and I'm just going to refresh the screen because now that I've pushed the file, okay, now I have the images directory, and notice the commit message is on the folder. And here is the GitHub Workflow print screen file that I can then embed, right? I've shown you different ways to do it. I'm going to copy the image address. Oh, and the post for this. Okay. So again, you may be attaching this if you got an error, because this is a really important part of, if you do get an error, we want to help you figure out what that error is. And so unlike what we did before, we're actually going to, and I can embed the media, right? I've shown how to do that. I could link to the media if I wanted to. I think embed's kind of fun. I can do it that way. I'm going to paste that URL. Let's see if it comes in. Takes it a minute. I think that should work, okay? Again, this is up on GitHub, so then I want you to write about your experience here. Okay. All right. So I'm going to, again, just to reiterate, for those of you that if you did have an error on this step, you can do a print screen, but in your case, you can just attach it because I want you to, from here on out, only have things change locally and push your code. I shouldn't have gone back there. I just showed you the GitHub one. Okay, and then the sooner, hopefully we can, help you out and figure out if there was a step there that you ran into that. Hopefully you got that done and you didn't run into any issues, but sometimes that's what happens when you're doing technical work, is you run into issues and you have to get help. Okay, all right, I'll move on and do a short video talking about the lecture for this week.